Hi everyone! Do you die a lot on hunt trains? I'm here to help. My name is Hidden Moon, I'm part of Hunt Leadership for Dynamis, and today we're going to go over the mechanics and solves for all Dawntrail A ranks. I know some of them seem intimidating, but we're going to break everything down one by one, and by the end of this video, you'll be ready to do your own solo hunt train. Now before we start, I know that for a lot of you, hunts are your first endgame content, so we're going to go over a little vocabulary so you can understand what I'm talking about. If you're an experienced raider, go ahead and skip this section with the chapter markers below. The first thing we need to know is cardinals and intercardinals. Let's pretend that this circle in the middle of the platform is the boss. Cardinals refers to north, south, east, and west of the boss's position in the direction that he's facing. That's what I'm marking now. So anytime I say cards, it means these four positions. The other thing we need to know is intercardinals. Those are the spaces between the north, south, east, and west, so the diagonal spots if you divided the boss with an X instead of a cross. Whenever I say intercards, these are the positions that I'm referring to. Another thing to be aware of as I'm flying over to our first mark is that every boss has a maximum number of players it can affect with debuffs. We believe this number is around 50 or 60, but we're not completely sure. In any case, the important thing is that if a mechanic is going out that gives debuffs and you do not receive one, this is normal. It will happen on all large trains. All it means is that your life is a little bit easier because you won't have to adjust for your debuff for the next mechanic. With that in mind, let's go ahead and start going over mechanics. Our first A rank is Nechuciho in Pkuucha. Now Nechuciho really only has one mechanic, but it's a little complicated. You'll see right here he's casting Word of the Wood, which is a frontal cleave. Everything he ever casts is going to continue to be a frontal cleave. Whisper of the Wood will give him several debuffs, which you can see here. Let's pause for a minute so we can look at it. As you can see, he has a left, forward, backward, and right debuff. Now these are not the locations he's going to cleave necessarily. All of these are a turn, then a frontal cleave again. So when we go back in, we're going to see him turn left, frontal cleave, turn forward to the same spot, frontal cleave, turn backwards, frontal cleave, and turn right, frontal cleave. So each cleave is relative to the position before it. It's not based on where he was standing originally. There's a couple different patterns he can have for this. Let's watch another one. This time it's backwards, left, right, forwards. This particular pattern has a safe spot that's safe for all of this. I'm going to move to his original front left and stay there the entire time. Now, not every one of these patterns is going to have a single safe spot like that. You are often going to have to move and adjust during his cleaves. So watch for this one. The snapshotting is quite tight, so I'm moving into the cleave before the animation is finished. It looks like I'm walking into danger, but it is safe to move into that animation, and you will need to do so to avoid getting vuln stacks. Now Nechuciho does have two other moves. They're quite simple comparatively. The first is Sentinel Roar, which you're going to see now. This is a big raid wide. Use your party mitigation. As you can see, that did hit some of the healers in my party quite hard, so you will need to use shields. Finally, we have level 5 Death Sentence. This is an interruptible cast, and you should never see it go off. However, just in case, we did go find out what it does. In the extremely unlikely event that you have no tanks or ranged on your train, all this cast does is give a cleansable doom to everyone whose level is a multiple of 5. As you can see, the level 100 players in our party got it, and the people who switched to a different class that's not a multiple of 5 did not. All you have to do is have your healers Asuna, and you'll be just fine. Next up in Pkuucha, we have Queen Hawk. Now Queen Hawk does not do normal AoEs. Her purple AoEs are actually a Simon Says game. So when she casts BB Gone, we're going to move outside that purple ring, and then we're going to continue to stay outside the purple ring. You can see she gave herself a debuff, and she's going to attack anyone who moves into that space. This hits for very large damage. It is survivable if you are a tank, but usually not otherwise. BB here, same thing, but this time we're going to stay close to her. People who run away are going to get one-shotted. See in the bottom left corner, that just happened. Once that angry debuff goes away, we're safe to move wherever we like. Next up, she's going to do a raid-wide Resonant Buzz. This will do raid-wide damage, so use your mitigations. It's also going to give everyone a marching debuff. You can see mine is March Forward. I'm going to adjust for this debuff for the next BB Here or BB Gone. As you just saw, to march forward into BB Here, I did stand in that purple ring. It doesn't do damage, it's just a telegraph. She'll do another Resonant Buzz. This time I have a rightward march debuff, so I'm going to adjust for this again. This next one is always the opposite of where she told you to be last time. I'm going to march out of the purple, and I'm going to be safe standing here. Her next mechanic is called Straight Spindle. This is a line attack straight in front of her. Don't be in front of her, and you'll be safe. She will do this several times, and it will be in a new spot each time, so make sure to keep watching where she's facing and adjust accordingly. Finally, we have Frenzied Sting. This is a tank buster on whoever currently has aggro. It doesn't hit that hard, and it's not usually necessary to shield. Beyond this point, all of her mechs are just going to repeat, so do the same solves until she's dead. Moving on to Kozamauka, our first A rank here is the Raintriller. Do-Re Misery is a variable cast with a dialogue tell. As you can see, he has dialogue both on top of my screen and in my chat log. Chirp means out. The first one is always chirp. Then he will jump to a random player and cast Chirp Ribbit, which is out, then in. Let's watch that go off. The third possible dialogue for this is Croak, which is always added at the end of the third Do-Re Misery cast. However, out then in can happen in any order before that. I recommend going behind him and then adjusting for your out and in, or in then out, based on being behind him already. Now, Do-Re Misery from this point on will be totally random, so you will have to watch his dialogue. It is possible for him to use the same dialogue tell twice in one cast. For example, here we have Ribbit, Ribbit, Chirp. So we're in again, and now out. The next mechanic is Drop of Venom. This is a stack marker on a random player. Just get in the stack. It's not going to hurt to be in there. He will do this twice the first time, as well as use it a couple other times randomly throughout the fight. These are his only two mechanics. It's just various arrangements of Do-Re Misery, so keep watching that dialogue tell, switching off with Drop of Venom. Just remember that that Do-Re Misery tell can be in any order, and keep watching. For example, here we have Croak in the middle of the casts. As long as you remember what each piece of dialogue means, you'll be just fine. The second A rank in Kozamauka is Pkuucha, the giant toucan. His mechanics are very simple, but unfortunately, if you do mess up, there is the possibility of an insta-kill. His first cast is Mesmerizing March. This is a big out. Then he'll cast Stirring Samba, which is a massive forward cleave. If you get caught in either of these AoEs, you will be forced to dance for a period of time and unable to use any of your skills. Next is a Charge Gliding Swoop towards a random player. He can reset with this, so don't go too far away. Then he'll cast Marching Samba, which you may be able to infer is an out, followed by that forward cleave. So get out and behind to be safe. Now, anyone who is still dancing at that point is liable for an insta-kill, as I said. As you can see here, he's charging towards random players who are dancing and pecking them with his beak, which will kill them instantly. As far as I can tell, it is not possible with current gear to survive this even as a well-geared tank. He'll continue to cast Marching Samba several times. We're always going to be out and behind for this. And then once again, he'll peck more players who got caught. His only other mechanic is Pecking Flurry. Most trains won't see this, but if you do, it is a large series of raid wides. Consider this a heal check, use your mitigations, and hit those AoE heals as needed. Beyond this, all you have to do is not end up dancing, and you won't end up dying. Moving on to Yehehetoaua'pyo, our first A rank here is Starcrier. Now Starcrier's first mechanic is capable of one-hit killing healers and DPS, so be careful. First cast will always be one of two things: Wings Breath Winds or Stormwall Winds. Wings Breath Winds, which we have first here, is a loose out. And the first cast is always immediately followed by its opposite, so for Stormwall, we're going in. This can happen in either order, so be sure to pay attention to cast names. Next up is Dirge of the Lost. This does light raid-wide damage, but more importantly, will give everyone a temporary misdirection debuff. This is immediately followed by another Stormwall or Wings Breath. And again, the opposite after. You will need to adjust for these casts with your temporary misdirection in mind. If you struggle with temporary misdirection as much as I do, the easiest way I find to handle this is to start close to the boss. If in is first, I stay where I am. If out is first, I can run in any direction, including across the boss's hitbox, and have enough wiggle room to be out. Then, when I go in, I have a little bit of time to wiggle around and adjust for that arrow if I get it wrong the first time. After that first set of Dirge of the Lost plus in and out, you'll see arrow 4. This is the big raid wide. You do need mitigation on this. It will hurt. Next up is Swift Wind Serenade. This is a line attack straight in front of him. It is quite dangerous, and it can insta-kill people who are not geared. Much as with Queen Hawk's frontal line AoE, he will do this multiple times before moving on. From here out, it's nothing new, just more Dirge of the Lost and ins out. With that temporary misdirection, you may see some other mechanics repeat if he's alive for a particularly long time. Next up, we have my personal favorite A rank of this expansion, Rrax Yity'a, the little blue sugar glider. His mechanics are very known for wiping trains, but it's actually quite simple. He's carrying 2 knives, and he can swipe us with a knife in either hand. So after a few auto attacks, the first thing he's going to do is either right or left wing blade. He's going to do this 3 times in quick succession. We just get to the opposite side from the cast name, and then we remember where the safe spots were, because this is going to come back. This time our safe spots were left, right, left. Laughing Leap is a line charge towards a random player, but being in the line will kill you, so don't be in front of him while he casts this. After 2 Laughing Leaps, he's going to turn and cast Triplicate Reflex. Triplicate Reflex will redo his original 3 swipes. As you can see here, our safe spots were left, right, left. The snapshotting on this is extremely tight, so you need to be almost on the midline when you get to either side in order to move quickly enough. We're going to see 3 wing blade casts again. Once again, we are remembering our safe spots because we were going to use them again later. This time our safe spots were left, right, right. Once again, 2 Laughing Leaps, and then we'll need to be on his left, then his right, then his right. Let's watch that go off. Again, pay attention to how close I am to the midline for safety. As with Nechuciho, I do move into the animation before it completes in order to be safe. This pattern of 3 side swipes, followed by 2 Laughing Leaps and a Triplicate Reflex, is his only mechanic. However, as you can see from the number of dead on your screen right now, it is very dangerous. If you have trouble with memory games, you can always ask someone on your train to shout the safe spots, and there's usually someone willing to accommodate. Both of the A ranks in Shaloni are probably 2 of the most notorious for causing mass deaths. Particularly for Keheniheyamewi, I like to ask my trains to not pull until the entire train has arrived, because he will kill people in the air. We're about to see this with his first mechanic. Scatter Scourge is a massive ring AoE with a safe spot inside. It has verticality, as you can see, that does go off quite high. It will immediately be followed by the out AoE, Body Press, then Slippery Scatter Scourge. Slippery Scatter Scourge is a charge, then a ring AoE. The safe spot is always at the end of the charge. This will be followed up by Poison Gas. This does raid-wide damage as well as apply a marching debuff. We'll have a Body Press, another out. This will be followed by Slippery Scatterscourge. Again, the safe spot is at the end of the charge, but we need our March debuff to bring us there. So for my leftward march, I made sure the end of the charge was to my left. You do have a little bit of wiggle room here if you have a charge move. Here you're about to see an example where I did not move in time to get to the end of the charge for Slippery Scattershot. I'm going to use my charge to get to the inside instead. It's very tight, but if you know it's coming, that charge does work. The only other thing you need to worry about here is Malignant Mucus, another interruptible cast you shouldn't see go off. However, just for completionism's sake, we did go find out what it does. That flappy tongue animation is a little misleading. All this is going to do is spit circular poison AoEs at random players. You can live if you're a tank. You will probably not live if you are not one. There is time, however, to move out if you are very, very quick. The remainder of the fight is just going to be a repeat of these mechanics: Poison Gas, Body Press out, Slippery Scattershot charge then in. However, one thing you do want to keep in mind here is because he charges to a random player, it is possible for him to reset himself. You're about to see that right here. The player he charged to was too far away from his original spawn point, so he's going to go back to it, and his HP will reset to 100. This is rare. Normally he will die, and this will not happen. However, try not to be too far away, just in case. Next up in Shiloni is Yehehetoaua'pyo. As you can see, I have Danger Dorito'd myself for this one. There are no debuffs on players for this fight, so the safe spot is universal. If you know the solve for this, I highly recommend being the hero your party needs and putting a Dorito on yourself. Whirling Omen is going to give Yehehe a debuff on himself to turn in a direction. This next cast can be one of several different ones. We're going to slow down and talk about it. Tail to turn spit means he will do a wide tail cleave, turn in the direction of his debuff, and then do a wide frontal cleave. The safe spot here will be his original right because it's out of the way of both the tail and the new front. Standing at his head would also have been safe here. All of his casts work in this manner, with some variation of tail, turn, and spit. Now this order can be anything. It can be a turn into a tail into a head. It can be a head, turn, tail. You have to keep watching the casts and adjusting. Every Whirling Omen after the first one is going to give him 2 debuffs. We're going to watch this in slow motion again. It works exactly the same, but we get 2 casts after the Omen. This time we have spit, turn, tail. That means I'm going to where the tail is now, because he's going to do a frontal cleave. Then he's going to turn, do the tail cleave. So the original tail spot is safe. Then he'll do a second cast to consume the second debuff. This time we have turn, tail, spit. So I will need to move because he's going to turn to the left, tail cleave, and then frontal cleave. Because I'm now where his head will be, I have to move to the original front spot. Because these are very wide cones, I like to use the arrows on his front and flanks to let me know I'm definitely in or out of them. He'll do Whirling Omen again. This Whirling Omen is a raid-wide that does not give him a debuff, and every Whirling Omen from now on will alternate between giving debuffs and doing no damage, or giving raid-wide damage and giving no debuffs. So here we have the debuff version again. We have a right turn and a tail turn spit, so I'm going to cross to the other side. Then we have a left turn debuff. With a turn, spit, tail, I'm safe where I already am. This is the entirety of the fight. He will just alternate between those raid-wide whirling omens and the whirling omens that give debuffs, followed by the variable casts. Do not feel discouraged if this one takes you a little while to understand. It is one of the trickiest ones on the hunt train. We will watch one more of these variable casts. Feel free to go back and watch as many of these as you need to until it starts making sense to you. Next up in Heritage Found, we have Heshuala. This is the most difficult one for me personally because she involves counting and I'm dyscalculic. However, if you're good at counting, you may not have the same problems that I do. Higher Power is a variable cast, once again. This time she's going to give herself a debuff with a number. This time we have 3, followed by either an X or a cross. She will do a frontal cone AoE, the same number of times the debuff says, and then either shoot the intercardinals if she has an X or cardinals if she has a cross. This time we have 3 frontal cones rotating, and the cardinals will be the safe spot because she's shooting intercardinals. When she only does 3 cones, you can move into the first one and stay there and be safe. However, the number of cones does vary. It can be anywhere from 3 to 6. Here we have 5 cones. This time we are going to have to follow the conal AoEs around their rotation a few times in order to be safe. So I'm going to let 1 go, 2 go, and now she only has 3 more, so this one will be safe. I'll move to the card. She rotates 1 more time to do X marks the shock, and I have a safe spot. It's also possible for her to shoot the cardinals, in which case intercardinals are safe. Here's an example of that here. We have 4 cones, then a cross on the cardinals. The easiest way to know where the intercardinals are when she's rotating is to move to the edge of the cone cast and stay there. I ran right to the corner of the cast and I'm safe. There is a little bit less wiggle room here, but it's still doable. Anyone hit by the cross will be frozen in place and receive an electricity vulnerability debuff. These lightning bolt AoEs are targeted on those frozen players and are insta-kills for anyone with the debuff, but will not hurt you too badly if you do not receive it. She'll do another higher power cast, followed by those cones and a cross. Let's watch that go off. This one happened to be the same as the first one, but you should never rely on that being the case. Again, we're looking at those people who got hit by X marks the shock. You can see them being instant killed by those lightning bolt AoEs. Next up is Electrical Overload. This is a raid-wide. Use your raid-wide mitigation and party shields. From this point out, all of her mechanics just repeat. You'll continue to see those higher power casts with the cones, variable crosses, and lightning bolts following. It's fairly rare for her to be alive long enough to see 2 electrical overloads, but it is possible. You probably have an extra party mitigation available. Now, as you can see, for our next A rank, Urna Variabilis, I have removed my Dorito because this A rank is another one that gives personal debuffs that will affect where you need to move. However, this first part is static, so we'll start there. Proximity Plasma is a giant out. Remember the size that is because it will come back later. This is always followed by Ring Lightning, which is an in. Remember, Plasma is always out. Ring is always in. Next up is Magnetron. This is a raid-wide that will also give everybody a debuff with either positive or negative charge. Her next cast, she will have a charge rotating around her. She will do either Magneto Ring or Magneto Plasma. You will need to get in or out based on how your charge and her charge interact. For this one, we were both negative, so I got pushed out, and I needed to plan for that, but I did not. Remember that opposites attract and similars repel. If you forget, Arm's Length and Surecast do work on this. We'll see another Magnetron. We'll get charges again. This will be followed by another Magneto Ring or Magneto Plasma. I'm going to be pulled towards her, so I'm going very far out. And this time I was safe. Thunderous Shower is a typical stack marker. Just get in the stack. With current gear, this does still hit quite hard, although that will change as gear gets better. Electro Wave is a big raid-wide. Use your party mitigations appropriately. It does hit pretty hard. Shields are necessary. From this point forward, all mechanics will simply repeat in turn. Remember your middle school science classes, and you should handle this just fine. Moving right along to the final zone, we have Sally the Sweeper. Sally the Sweeper is another Simon Says memory game. This execution model cast will do 3 purple AoEs. These purple AoEs do not hurt, they just tell you where the future will hurt. This code execution cast will then do the actual damage associated with those AoEs in order. So you can see here, it was safe out, then in, then cardinals. It is again a wide cardinals, so do not be in melee range. Targeted Advance is a massive AoE targeted on a random player. The cast bar is quite long, so even if it is centered on you, you will have time to run out. She will then do another execution model. Remember what these are. I like to write them down and shout. And this next execution will be reverse execution. This means she will do the purple AoEs backwards. So because we had out in cards this time, we will have to do cards in out to be safe. She'll do another targeted advance. Once again, plenty of time to run out of this if you're not typing. Now, from now on, all of the code executions will be random forwards or backwards. So you're always going to be watching that execution model, storing it in your brain, and then watching to see what her cast bar is. This one is code execution, so it will be forwards normally. And again, it is random. You cannot predict this pattern past the first 2. Here's another example. We're going to have an execution model followed by reverse execution. So we had in safe, card safe, out safe. So we're going to go for this reverse execution, out, cards, in. There's the cast bar, out, cards, in. These are her only 2 mechanics. They take turns throughout the rest of the fight. For our very final A rank, we have the mimetic Cat's Eye and his little grr. This is another one that wipes a lot of people, but is actually quite simple. All of these are gaze mechanics and an opposite. For this Cat's Eye, he'll be jumping to the arrow on the ground, and the gaze will go off from that point, so we turn out based on where that arrow is, not based on where the boss is. This Bloodshot Gaze is a stack with a gaze. We want to be in the stack, but facing away from the person at the center. Killer Curiosity is an opposite cast. This works much like Wicked Whim for Luna Tender Queen if you are an Endwalker hunter. So this time for Cat's Eye, we are going to face the arrow on the ground. Again, anyone who doesn't do the correct gaze will get doomed. Bloodshot Gaze, with Curiosity up, you can see the debuff. We're going to be in the stack facing the person in the center. You will get damaged for this, but as long as you're facing the correct person, you will not be doomed. Gravitational Wave is a big AoE. For the rest of the fight, we're watching his debuff bar to see where we need to look. It is random from now on. No Curiosity buff means we look away from the attack. Curiosity buff means we look at the attack. Now, Killer Curiosity can sometimes be only one cast, other times it will last for several casts, so you do need to keep watching the debuff bar. This is very literally all there is to it. The reason people die here is because they're not looking at his debuff bar. As long as you're paying attention though, this fight is very doable. Just keep watching the debuffs and his casts and face in the correct directions and you'll have no issues. That's going to wrap it up for our A-Rank Explainer video. I want to give a special shout out to the people who came on this special train with me at 4 in the morning on the Deadest server so I could capture footage of all these mechanics. Everyone was super game and we had a really fun time. If this video was helpful to you, please share it with your friends. I know several people have been struggling with these, and I'm really hoping that this will be a good resource for the entire community. If you're interested in getting involved in Hunts on Dynamis, I've left a link to where we organize in the description below. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful day.